We have a really great agenda today. We're really trying to keep things relevant, always trying to show off the product that is a given and a must, but also talk about use cases, talk about what's relevant, talk about where things are going. I love those blogs that you see on Medium and on LinkedIn. It's like, oh, the data mesh is here in the future, or why this is dead. And love reading them, but then I'm always left with that question of like, okay, this is marketing fluff. Is it just a blog? So really lending some color today to some of those topics that a lot of people talk about, and specifically why a catalog in and of itself is not a modern day solution, and why it needs to do a little bit more to actually be a solution, not just a dusty dictionary. We love the collaboration. I always like leaving a good bit of time at the end for any question and discussion and dialogue. I think it makes these things extra fun and collaborative. Alrighty, I will jump into today's topic with the opening hook being this was a Medium article or a LinkedIn post that, hey, traditional catalogs were built for the past. They served their purpose, but as we evolve, as data evolves, our solution to our problems also needs to evolve. And when I think of traditional catalogs, I think of glorified data dictionaries that oftentimes sit on a shelf and collect dust, quite frankly speaking. Collate has data cataloging capabilities. I love cataloging capabilities, but to say, oh, it's a catalog is a dirty word in my mind. I get mad when people say, oh, are you guys a catalog? No, we are a data platform. Everyone knows says they're a data platform. So today I really want to show how we address those modern problems, things like the data mesh, things like medallion architecture, understanding concepts like products and data contracts and how they integrate with the platform. Putting these things in the forefront of the conversation and not at the afterthought. We don't want to just tack something on to the product and say, oh, we do it for the sake of doing it so we can end up on some magic quadrant somewhere. We really want to think about these problems that we're having in a unified fashion. And it's not just the evolving architecture. It's something as simple as data quality and observability. We want to make sure that we have trust in our data. It's great that I can understand it, but can I actually trust it? Oftentimes becomes a whole other conversation to tackle and understand. So really addressing that point, I would be an SEO marketing person's worst nightmare if I didn't mention AI. I want us to be not just AI ready and AI enabled, so not just thinking about what AI features do you have. Those things are great, but also addressing modern day AI infrastructure concerns. So thinking about our MCP integration, thinking about some things as our open API spec in our SDKs and covering a wide number of endpoints. And then obviously thinking about our knowledge graphs and the RDF support that we're introducing later this year. So really important stuff there. But before we go down that rabbit hole on how Collate is a solution to the solution for the modern enterprise and not just a traditional catalog and why traditional catalogs are dead, I kind of want to highlight my story and how I came to Collate because I think it lends to the journey that a lot of organizations are going. I spent all of my career in the data space as an Oracle DDA for a financial service company. So really in the weeds of things. And then shortly after that, I moved to Informatica's professional service in the master data management and data quality space. And I absolutely love master data management. If anyone else here loves master data management, connect with me on LinkedIn. We can talk about it. We can talk about the modern day problems it has. But when I was doing MDM at Informatica, I kept running across the same problem. I did not know my customers' data. I was at Informatica working on a number of use cases, hospitality, financial services, oil and gas, and everyone has different data, and that's expected. Me as an outsider could never really understand, should I be matching on a country? Should I be matching on an ISO code? Should I be matching on a country abbreviation? Is it Germany? Is it Deutschland? Is it ISO 311? What actually is it? Is it DE? So thinking about all those things, I thought, man, it would be nice if this was just documented somewhere. So I moved away from the MDM data quality space, trying to find and understand data. And then when I left Informatica, I moved on to Alation, where I was solving those problems. I was understanding data, and Alation was great as a data catalog, a data dictionary. So let me understand when I see a country, this is the value that I should expect, and then show me some sample data. Was the perfect tool to address those problems. But then I was left wanting more, much like a lot of you guys. The problem didn't stop there once I knew it was Germany or Deutschland or DE. The problem kept emerging. Can I actually trust this data? In this solution, not having to go to 101 place, not having to rely on a test that somebody that's no longer at the organization created, really being able to trust this data. So I found data, I started to understand it, Alation, but I wanted to actually trust it. And that's where I came across Collate and open metadata, where I was able to actually bring all of those things together, the ability to find data, the ability to understand data, the ability to trust data, so then I can actually use it in exciting things that I'm really passionate about, like MDM, like data quality, like data analytics, like AI capabilities. But it's really those three elements coming together that tells the story. And that's what I'm going to do now, is really thinking about those three topics that I mentioned, the modern day architecture. So thinking about the data mesh and how Collate supports it. Also really thinking about how we can think about data products and contracts as first-class citizens. So thinking about those lenses there, and then switching into trusting my data. It's not enough to hope and pray that the data's quality is good, but actually being able to define tests, actually being able to trust the data that's out there. And then that last point, not just AI features, but AI infrastructure, making sure that we're doing both. And where we're going to start with is just coding and finding a data asset. So right here on my screen, I have Collate's landing page. It is highly customizable, like I always like to say in these sessions. Here I can see my data, the assets I'm following. I could also see my top tier assets. I can see things like curation and like description. So there's stewardship problems that you always come across with governance or discovery, but actually being able to track those things. A lot of data catalogs, you have to jump through hoops and ladders, querying some external source to understand how many assets have a description. We make it easy for you by having these things front and center. Thinking again about data quality and data trust, not being an afterthought, but always being baked into the product. I know a lot of vendors are integrating with data quality solutions or trying to do it themselves, but that's just taping something onto the product and not fully integrating it with it. So I'll show that off in a few moments. I also have an area for my task, my data assets, domains, data products, and all my data assets that are out there. So I want to search for a data asset. Maybe I want to look for customer. I can search for customer. Again, this is typical that you would see in any data catalog. This isn't us reinventing the wheel. But what we can do here is obviously filter on a number of things. Where I think Collate does a pretty good job in a number of spaces is taking this a step farther and thinking about how we could really make search and discovery easy. So I'm going to go back to my homepage and I'm just going to paste this natural expression. Hey, I want tier 2 tables with silver customer data. I can do that. I'm not having to filter on 1,000,001 different assets, and I'm able to find the exact specific element that I'm looking for here. So this is where we can start thinking about different elements and how we're making ourselves pretty unique. I'm going to click into this customer table here and really start to show some of those concepts like the data mesh, like data products, like data contracts, and how Collate's addressing those with that modern architecture, those modern problems in mind. We're not trying to, choose a solution, but we've been growing with those modern approaches like the data mesh over a number of years as opposed to predating them. And that obviously lends to a whole lot of advantages when we think about unification. So obviously we have our customer table here. We have some AI features like generating descriptions, like generating different tiers, like generating data quality tests and auto tagging. So all of those elements are included. But then we also have our concept of the data mesh where we can then think, okay, how are we calling these things out? And I think thinking about this is really important. Let's now think about where these things lie. So I have my customer domain. I can click into my customer domain. I also have my data product. So thinking about who owns this, who's accountable for this, I can click into my domain here and I can see what this domain is about. I can also view the different data products. So I had this customer 360 one. I can link this here and I can look at my customer 360 data product. So I can understand what are the assets, how this should be used. And I like to think about data products as first-class citizens. I have this philosophy that I don't want anybody on my team or the teams I work with using data. And that might sound odd to you guys at first, But the reality is data is not trustworthy. Data product is. And if you've ever met with me and you've heard me talk about data products, I always make the analogy of a cereal box. If you just hand me a handful of Cheerios just in your hand and say, hey, eat this, I'm going to look at you funny. Now, I love Cheerios, so I might have some anyways. You might love data, so you're going to use it anyways. But what I really prefer is you handing me a cereal box that says Cheerios, has General Mills logo on it, has an ISBN number, an expiration date. I can look at my macros, my carbs, my protein, and all that information. But I'm actually trusting the box of cereal versus a handful of Cheerios. And that's what the data product allows. It gives me that documentation, the nutrition facts of my data. And then I can look at the assets that belong to it. And then again, I can navigate to these. I can search within here. I'm able to start understanding the trust and quality of these elements. From here, I can then go into things like contracts and other areas, but it looks like our questions are lining up. Let's take a look at some of those and see what we have. So it looks like one of the questions we have in the chat is from the MDM point of view. That MDM, yes, I think how I frame Collate is we're not necessarily solving the MDM, matching and merging, creating the golden record, but we're using things like proper documentation, like trust to help in that solution. So I can't do MDM until I understand my data, and I definitely can't do it until I have quality pieces around it. That's where Collate's able to lend in. So having it be that reference point, when I was doing MDM at Informatica, we had Excel sheets to define rules that went through so many different versions and iterations. With Collate, we can actually track the changes in the data product itself. We're seeing this version history in real time. So really being able to create that standardization. So you can then throw this into your MDM agent and go. In the Q&A, it looks like we have a question from Stefani. Does Collate support multi-domains? I know Alation does, but that sometimes is a blessing and a curse. At our organization, we really struggle with accountability. So having multiple domains and multiple owners makes it that hard. How does Collate handle this? That's a great question. Thank you, Stefani. And if I go back to my asset here, it looks like I can go and select multiple domains. So you're probably thinking, Joe, that's not what I want. Well, we don't want to be the decision makers here. What we've actually done is given you the ability to specify are multi-domains allowed, are multiple data products allowed, are multiple users and team ownership allowed. So really thinking about the fundamentals of the data mesh, what we can actually do here is say, hey, no, multi-domain should not be allowed. Don't allow a user to select multiple options, or only one team can own an asset. I'm a big believer on that accountability one as well, Stefani. I'm thinking about if you have multiple owners, multiple people assigned, nobody actually owns the asset. So this is how we're actually able to create those rules, to create that conditionality on are those things allowed, are they not? And this list is expanding. This is where we're able to really understand what's going on out there as well. So, hey, it's not going to be a yes or no. It's going to be you decide. We're going to give you the tools. We're going to give you the capabilities, but we want you to be the ones that control. Can you have multiple domains or can you have multiple ownerships? Great question there. Jumping back into this customer table, we can see those different elements come to life. But the area I want to talk about briefly is also the data contracts. And this will be an actually good segue of getting away from the architecture and into trust. But we still want to think about contracts because those are one of those modern principles that the traditional data catalog, quite frankly, wasn't suited to support. So within Collate, we have this concept of contracts. This allows you to define your YAML. You can do it within the UI. You can do it via code or API. We like taking an API approach first to everything. And in this, I can say, hey, this is the contract details. This is the schema we have. We can see this contract statuses, the semantics, the quality. So I can have a variety of different types of checks. I can give the details for the contracts. I can give the schema. What fields are required here? What are their lengths? What terms or tags might also be required? I could also look at it from a semantic standpoint. Is an owner set? Going back to Stefani's point, is the domain there? Is an owner there? So being able to actually validate the quality of my metadata is incredibly important. And that's something that we're able to do as well here. and then quality, adding different types of quality checks to this, making sure that's all there. And then we're able to run this or put this on a schedule and say, hey, the contract failed. Why is it failing? It looks like quality and semantics are out of whack. But when I land on this customer table, I'm able to start absorbing this information. I see that there's a contract issue. I see that there's a warning from a data quality standpoint. So I'm actually able to really trust this information that's out there. So thank you, Stephanie. Sorry for mispronouncing your name on a live demo, but really appreciate the context setting there. So we talked about the modern approach to things. What we want to move into now is going into that area of, hey, how do I actually trust this data? And we don't want trust to ever be bolted on. And actually, before I do that, it looks like Andrew had a question. I saw some colored badges. Can you talk more about those? What are they? I'm assuming medallion architecture. I want to double check because that's something we in our Snowflake environment. Also, can we control show and go to assets if that's the case? Got it. So high level, Andrew's asking about these different medallions, these certifications that we had. If I go back to the homepage, we had a couple, I think, over here. So we had silver, bronze, and gold. So yes, Andrew, this is in reference to the medallion architecture that Snowflake and Databricks both implement. We have different types of workflows to help support that. So you can set it in the UI or you can use a workflow to certify these different elements. So, hey, if an entity has an owner and description and it's tier 1, let's set it as silver or gold, or let's set it as bronze, or don't set the certification. So really thinking about that medallion structure is something that we're able to do. And then for your second question there, can we only show certain elements? Yes. And there's two ways we can do that. The first way is going into our preferences here, and we can go into our search configurations. And this is where we can control the weights of search. And this is something I don't see a lot of solutions like Alation or like Informatica or like Atlan being able to actually perform. We want to always give you guys the power of being able to set different weights and different types of boost for this. So we have a concept of tiers. We have those medallions. So I can say if something is tier 1, boost it by 50, or I can add additional tags and terms like that gold, or like GDPR, or like data quality, or like governance to then become different types of weights. And I'm going to elevate those search results in my UI or penalize different things. We can also do this at an asset level and control the different things that we're able to search on as well. So again, other solutions have some black box of relevance and weights for search. We're giving you the power to set those things up and have visibility on how we're doing search in general. The other things that we're thinking about here is not just having it be search driven, but thinking about that medallion, or not that medallion, the data mesh architecture, and thinking of federation as a whole. We also have access controls where we can set up different types of policies. And I'm just going to jump to the bottom here where I can say, hey, for tables, let's allow people to do a specific type of action. So maybe I want to view sample data or add sample data for a specific set of conditions or criteria. So I can say if this tag is here, and I just need to remove that. If the tier is tier 1 and has personal data, allow them to view sample data, or I can say deny them to view sample data. And this can be based off domain. This can be based off a number of different types of asset. We can use, hey, only show gold assets here, or if they have a specific role. So I know a lot of platforms have this weird concept of roles where you have to be a steward, or you have to be a data engineer, or you have to be an admin or a catalog steward, whatever that means. This gives you the flexibility to not only create policies, but also create the roles. So we have out of the box roles, but we also have the ability to add roles. So going back to Andrew's question, we can say, hey, Andrew, just create a role and then create a policy that says gold viewers, and they're only going to view their gold assets. You might have another team that needs silver and bronze. This is where you're able to control that visibility and viewability. And this directly ties back to that federation, because we're able to control what users are able to see, what users are able to do based off a variety of roles. And we're not trying to say, put a sorting hat on people and say, you're one of 6 roles. We're trying to expand that outwards and really give you the flexibility that the modern data enterprise needs. Great question there. I'm going to hit a couple that are in the chat now. Sergio, data quality. Give us a quick second. We're going to hit data quality next. So that's a good segue. We also have a question. Do you have any doc that will allow us to follow up on pricing? On our website, we do have our different tiers for pricing that gives you those different types of levels of information. I also encourage you to reach out to our sales team to learn a little bit more on how we do pricing. I'm just an engineer here, so when it comes to actual numbers, I would have to defer that to sales. And then the other question that we have in the chat was, can you integrate with the permissions and configurations with another system, Databricks specifically? So quick answer to that, we do have a concept or an application called reverse metadata. What this reverse metadata will allow us to do is push out tags out of Collate into Databricks. And within Databricks, you can then create different types of policies and different elements like that to address those specific needs that you have there. So simple answer is yes. We also have services like Ranger that allow you to control security at that level. And then I have a question in the chat. Not sure if you already talked about it, but why did you leave Alation? That's also a great segue into Sergio. And I think it's this quality piece that really excited me. So really being able to think about this as a whole. Another reason I think I moved away from Alation to this is one of our co-founders, Harsha, really talked widely about Collate, and just seeing the passion he had for this light up in his eyes drew me to the Collate platform. But jumping into the quality piece, I want to think about how Collate solves this quality challenge because it's important. And again, unified is key. I want this to always be front and center, and you need to be able to come to this asset and see what's happening. We have our profile, but we also have our data quality test where I can look at a number of different tests that are out there. Maybe I care about number of rows or a customer's table versus staging table, or values to be positive or between two specific values. So looking at this one, I can actually see the dynamic threshold that we set. I can see the results. I can open up an incident. And a lot of solutions just integrate with things like Great Expectations or like DBT test cases. That is something we're able to do, Sergio, and I'll show that off in a few moments. But we can also add tests naturally and natively here. I can select from, I believe, 21 out of the box different tests, even the ability to add a custom SQL. And then I can actually set what these things should look like. So maybe I care about the row counts to be between certain values. I can set that min and max value. I can also use our dynamic assertion to set that programmatically and automatically. So different things that we can do there from a data quality standpoint to really address those elements as well. So thinking about it from that lens, again, we're auto-suggesting data quality, but we also give you the ability to add a data quality test here and capture the results. And then we can view all of that data quality at the macro level. So here I can see how many assets have data quality, how many are healthy, how many test cases, the different dimensions of data quality that we have, our response times and resolutions as well. And then to Sergio's question, we're actually able to bring in a number of platforms, whether it be Great Expectations, whether it be DBT, whether it be Soda, and integrate with those tests. So if I go to my DBT example, because it's first, these tests are actually defined in DBT. I'm just surfacing those results, Sergio, here. And that can be the same case with Great Expectations. And I think that takes us to the last point. But before I jump to the last point, it looks like Stephanie has another question on the data quality component. Looks really cool, but I've seen other vendors like Alation and Monte Carlo charge extra. Is that the case with Collate? No, it is not. I'm a firm believer in trust, and I think we as data practitioners have a responsibility or an obligation to our stakeholders. And in any healthy relationship, trust isn't an add-on, it's a requirement. So having trust, paying or charging for trust is an absurd concept. So really thinking about having trust be a natural step is a reason we don't charge for test cases or a data quality add-on. It's natively built and unified into the solution. So if you had open metadata, if you had Collate, you're able to define these trust checks automatically from day one without having to pay extra or worrying about how many tests or how quality or how much quality you're doing. Go wild with it. Don't worry about it. Do what you need to do to deliver that trust to your stakeholders. That's the important part at the end of the day. So great question there, Stephanie. And then the last thing I want to cover, because I do want to save time or questions in this 30 for 30, is really thinking about things almost philosophically. We have AI features like any modern solution. So the ability to auto generate description, the ability to auto generate tiers and tags, the ability to auto suggest data quality rules are all things we're able to do from an AI feature. But feature is an infrastructure. And if we're trying to be AI ready, we need to have the infrastructure in place. That's where things like our open API schema really comes to play. We're an API first place, so you can find our Swagger out there. We also have a number of SDKs with more endpoints than you can imagine or even dream about as a developer. We also have our MCP integration where I can say, hey, can you find me a customer table in Collate? And I can see some of those BigQuery or Redshift different tables that are out there and get some names. I can do impact analysis or perform a number of different options using my Collate extension being that MCP ready. So incredibly important that we have that. And then the last thing I would say on that AI infrastructure piece that's obviously important is our knowledge graph with RDF support that we're currently developing. Lineage is obviously there, but we want to think past lineage. We want to think about relationships, who owns what, and really thinking in that RDF and Sparkle X language where we can query and develop for AI. But AI needs to know not just context, but the relationship between these assets. So we're building on top of our knowledge graph and being able to have capabilities that display that. I've lost my chat, so I'm not sure if there are more questions, but I will stop my share here, look at the Q&A, and see if we have covered everything there and in chat. So Chelsea, Joe, briefly, you talked on federation. What does access controls look like for Alation? We're struggling to force people into set defined roles. Let me show that off one more time really quick, but great question there, Chelsea. In Collate, you have the ability to manage teams. You have the ability to manage users and groups, and you can customize and create the rules. So if I remember from Alation, you have your admin, your catalog admin, your steward, your composer, and your viewer. Those are out of the box. In Collate, you have the ability to add more to that. And then with those rules, you can create different types of policies that I showed off for domain permissions to really enact that federation, not just from an RBAC standpoint, that's easy, but also from an ADAC point of view. So great question there, Chelsea. And then Andrew said, I saw that you were able to define a lot. Yes, thank you, Ellie, for hitting that custom SQL anomaly detection and then setting up those thresholds as well. Really appreciate all the questions today. It's how I love to do these things, kind of jumping all over the place in a way, getting off script and really showing what's important to you guys. Alrighty. Well, I know I wasn't with you guys last week or 2 weeks ago, and it was Kia and API, so I appreciate him for filling in there. Thanks, Stephanie, for the kudos there. And again, thanks everyone for coming out to these bi-weekly 30 at 30s. Probably my favorite part of my job, aside from working with Ellie and Johnson. Seeing all of you guys, seeing what's actually happening and what's on your guys' mind. Alrighty. We will talk in 2 weeks and we will have some great content then. Alrighty. Take care.